All right, good morning, guys. I appreciate you opening up this video and taking the time to want to keep learning even when you're living in distance land. Today we're going to be going through lesson 2.5, which is talking about solving your equations with an absolute value. So before, you were able to solve regular equations with variables, one step, two step, kind of move through that process right before we went into red. And now you're going to evaluate absolute value expressions and also solve them. So the first thing we need to do is have kind of a refresher on what absolute values even mean. So go ahead and grab out your study guide and intervention worksheet. If you need to pause the video for a second to do that, go ahead and do so. But go ahead and grab your worksheet. You're going to be taking notes through there. Before we get started, though, I want to remind you guys that when we're talking about absolute value, we're talking about distance. So on a number line, if we were to compare -8 and 8, we're talking about the distance from 0. So from -8 to 0, the distance is 8. And from 0 to 8, the distance is still 8. Whenever we talk about distance, we never talk about negative numbers. You can't go drive -7 miles. You can't walk negative distance. You can't order -4 meters of cloth. So usually this is often used in real world scenarios where you want to maybe find the difference, but you don't want a negative number. So here, the absolute value of 8, talking about distance, is 8. And the absolute value of -8 is also 8. So basically anything you stick into these absolute values are always going to be 8. It's these little bracket things out here. So the absolute value of -2 is just 2. Same thing as 2. So let's go ahead and go through number 1 together. There we go. So the first type of problem you're going to get on your worksheet, and this is on your study guide and intervention worksheet, is where you're going to evaluate expressions with given values. So in this case, they give me R, N, and T. Number 1 only has a value for T, so let's plug that in. Here we have the absolute value of 8 minus T, but it said T equals 3. So instead of 8 minus T, we're going to put in 3. 8 minus 3 is 5. And then we can evaluate that absolute value. 5 is 5 away from 0. So we'll just leave it as 5. And then this becomes 8. And that is our final answer. I'm going to have you try 2. So go ahead and pause the video and try 2 real quick. And then we're going to move on to 3. So here we have 5 plus the absolute value of 3 minus n. N is -3. Minus a negative actually makes this into plus 3. So now we have 5 plus the absolute value of 6. 6 is 6 away from 0. So it just becomes 5 plus 6, which is 11. Pretty straightforward. I'm going to show you one more kind of more complicated one, and then I'll let you try some more of these on your own. So we're going to try 9 together. And we have 3x minus 2w minus q. We have to deal with those absolute values as well. So 3x is also known as 3 times x. Anytime you have a coefficient, it's always times. So you have 3 times, said x equals 4, minus 2 times w was 4.5. And that's all your absolute value. Minus q. Q is negative 1.5, but again, I'll remind you, anytime you have minus and negative, it becomes plus. So we have 3 times 4, some simple multiplication, minus 2 times 4.5, 9, plus 1.5. You always need to do, because we were talking about GAMDAs, one of the reasons we changed it to a G is because it's all grouping symbols, not just parentheses. One grouping symbol included in that is actually these absolute value equations or expressions. So we have 12 minus 9, which is 3, plus 1.5. Absolute value of 3 is 3. So you have 3 plus 1.5, which equals 4.5 or 4.5. And that's how we'll do those problems. We're going to try some of the other ones before moving on. We're going to go on to the next page, but make sure you pause this video and try some of the other ones. Alright, so once you've tried some of those, let's move on a little bit, and we're going to learn about solving equations. So in number 1, the thing you need to think about is there's not just one thing you could put into an absolute value to get 3. In it could have been negative or positive. So the way you do this is you're going to have 2 little journeys. You're going to have a negative journey and you're going to have the positive journey. Let's say, suppose whatever was in the absolute value was negative. So all you're going to do is copy the equation and just take the negative of the right side. On the positive side, you're going to copy the equation exactly as you see it, just without the absolute value. And then all you have to do is graph it. And boom, we're done with that one. Same thing here, you're going to do a negative journey and a positive journey. So on the negative journey, drop the absolute value, and you're going to make whatever it equals, make this thing negative. On the positive side, you're going to copy it exactly as you see it, just without absolute values. The nice thing about doing this is now we can just solve for these variables across the board, because it's going to be the same. I want to get x by itself, so I'm just going to add 4 to both sides. Here and here. So now we get x equals 8 and x equals 0. 4 minus 4 is 0. 4 plus 4 is 8. And then you'll just graph them on your number line. And that's it. That's how you do those problems. I'll show you 1 2-step one. So we're going to do number 5 together. So again, we're going to have a negative journey and a positive journey. The negative journey, you just copy everything down. On the left side of the equation, we're just going to make this guy negative. And on the positive side, you just copy your entire equation down exactly like you see it without absolute values. We always want to cover our variable first and move whatever is not attached to the variable. In this case, we have -2. So we will add 2 to both sides. And again, this is kind of nice because we have two almost similar, almost matching equations. So we can do the same thing on all of them to cancel out those 2's. The reason we add the 2's is because it's 5 minus 2, opposite, I wouldn't say absolute value, opposite of subtracting 2 is adding 2. 5y drops down. And in this case, 5y equals 9. Same procedure here. Oh my goodness, now I said that backwards. -7 plus 2 is not 9. It is -5. I'm doing the problem ahead. 7 plus 2 over here is 9. 5y, what I noticed some of you guys struggled with this in your quiz. Remember, 5y is like 5 times y. We want to do the inverse of that, and that would be division. And again, you do it all across the board. This way you cancel out the 5's, and you have y equals -1. And you have y equals 9/5. 9/5 is just like 1 4/5, which we can easily graph. We're going to graph 1 and 1 4/5, so pretty close to 2. And that's all you have to do. The final type of problem you will get is with word problems, or if you have to write an inequality. So go ahead and pull out your notebook, and I want you to write this down in your notebook, this entire slide. I wrote it out for you guys to kind of summarize what you're going to need to do here. So x minus a. A is talking about the value perfectly between the two numbers. So this right here is a in this case. The distance from the middle number and the outside values, in this case, is b. It is 3. And that's b right there. B equals 3, a equals 1. And then we could write our absolute value. X minus 1 equals 3. That'll be the case with all of them that you have to write. So pause this video, write this entire slide down, please, and I'll show you an example. So if it says write an equation involving the absolute value of each graph, first thing we're going to do is we're going to find our middle number. That's our a. I'm going to go back here. You can always check with the example. A is that middle number here. So in this case, our a is 0. We'll write a equals 0. And then I also want to know my b. I want to know how much I've traveled to get to here, and how much I've traveled to get here. Be careful because our tick marks do not count as 1 here. They count from 0 to 4. So that's a distance of 4, and that's a distance of 4. So b equals 4. We're going to use our format of x minus a equals b. And we're just going to plug the values in. We're almost done. You could leave it like this, but x minus 0 is the same thing as as x. You could leave it like that as well. And that's how you do those problems. I appreciate you guys taking the time to learn this lesson. What I want you to do now is to just take a little bit of time to work on some of the other problems in the study guide intervention worksheet. Then you can turn it in, take a picture of it, and put it on Google Classroom. Send it to me on Remind, email it if you want it graded right away, or you can just turn it in your packet when we pick them up at that next round of deliveries. I hope you guys are doing well. I know distance learning land is tough, and I appreciate you guys sticking it out and trying to keep up on your education and learning. I miss having you guys in my class. My classroom is pretty empty without you guys. So I appreciate you guys kind of sort of being in my classroom with me this morning, afternoon, night, whenever you're watching this. All right, see you guys.